Democrats were rigging their caucuses against candidates that they didn't want. Is there concern that caucuses can be rigged more easily than a standard primary election?
I think there are some special concerns that took place for the Democrats. It's kind of crazy, but Democrats actually had a caucus system whereby people actually went and stood in the corner of their preferred candidate. And if a candidate didn't get to 15% in that precinct, he or she was considered not viable. And so then campaigns would make the case for why you should move over to their corner. And it was rounds and rounds of doing this. So I do think it introduced the possibility for a lot of human error and, quite frankly, probably some undue influence as well. I feel more confident in the actual process for Republicans. I will say that we're already hearing some concerns of people putting the word out that either caucuses have been canceled or they've been delayed. I know that the Trump campaign has been all over this issue and encouraging people to show up at their polling, at their caucus place at 6:30 p.m. Central. If you show up late, you won't be allowed to come into caucus. And once you commit to going in, you can't leave early. So you got to be committed.
It's a big commitment time-wise compared to the standard primaries. Now, this election is unique in that we have a pretty popular independent candidate, RFK Jr. I got a comment from one of the Iowa viewers saying, is there a way for independent people to caucus?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about Iowa is that anyone can show up. And I know you're going to be talking about this later in the show. It leads to some concerns about Democrats interfering with the election process for Republicans. But the fact is that Republicans, independents, or Democrats can show up the night of the caucuses and say, hey, I want to participate in the Republican caucus. So while you can't cast a vote for RFK Jr. in the Republican caucuses, independents can go and participate. And frankly, everyone in the state of Iowa, you guys have had all the presidential candidates descend on you for months and months and months. It's your civic duty. Get out there, go cast your vote, have your voices heard.
Also wanted to ask, how late do you think it'll take till we know the results in this?
Honestly, I'm pretty confident. I think that by 9:30, 10 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to know who the winner is. My caveat to that would be if the polls are very, very wrong. I mean, look, all of the polls show President Trump at 50% plus in Iowa. The only way we're really going to have a long night in terms of who won the caucuses is if those polls are very, very, very wrong. And I think if that's the case, we probably need to revisit the entire polling industry altogether. I think the real question is going to be who comes in second place. And it may be a long night there to determine whether it's Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley.
Well, if there's enough Democrat infiltrators, it could be very wrong. They could throw off the polling. So it'll be interesting to see. But you have special coverage after my show. So everyone be sure to stay tuned to Vigilant News Network to check out Chris Barron's live coverage of the results. Thank you so much. Great talking to you.
Thanks, Ivory. Great talking to you.
Well, if you look at the polls, Donald Trump is the front runner by far, and many expect him to seize the victory in Iowa. So let's look at what he's been up to. He made a final plea to his supporters in Indianola, Iowa yesterday, asking them to turn out despite the frigid temperatures. He asked his supporters to brave the sub-zero cold and deliver him a decisive victory in the caucuses, saying that their vote would help bring to Washington everything that he's repeatedly promised if he returns to the White House. Many in the crowd wore white and gold caps, identifying them as Trump caucus captains who will help round up support for him. Now, Trump spoke of the 4 indictments he currently faces, saying he believes that they were driven by politics. He also reminded people of the 2020 election fraud evidence, still a concern coming up in 2024. Now, he pushed people to go caucus even if they're sick.
You want to save America from crooked Joe Biden? You must go caucus tomorrow. The first step. Look at the first step. We got to do it. We got to do it big. You got to get out. You can't sit home. If you're sick as a dog, you say, darling, I got to make it. Even if you vote and then pass away, it's worth it. If you're sick, if you're just so sick, you can't, darling, I don't think, get up. Get up. You get up, you vote. Yes, darling. Ultimately, we know who calls the shots, right? Right, Polly? So you be safe and all. You're going to be safe. And again, all indoors. It's going to be all indoors. But you got to get up. You got to vote. because it has nothing to do with anything but taking our nation back, and that's the biggest thing there is. So arrive no later than 6:30, and as I said earlier, the details are ia.donaldjtrump.com.
It's tough weather for caucusing. A blizzard hit parts of Iowa over the weekend, and temperatures have stayed below 0 degrees Fahrenheit all day. They're not forecast to rise above into positive territory until Tuesday. The weather is by far the coldest since Iowa started leading the presidential selection process in 1976. Luckily, once you get to your caucus location, it's an indoor event. Now, Trump's main GOP rivals also spent all Sunday in Iowa, making last-minute appeals to the Iowans. Gateway Pundit contributor Tim Kramer has been out there on the ground with them. Tim joins the show now to discuss. Tim, how's the weather? You staying warm?
It is cold. Democrats have said for a long time that hell will freeze over before Trump is president again. We are here. It's -4 in Davenport. It's cold.
Wow. So you've been going around Iowa at the various campaign stops. Where have you been, and what are you seeing?
Yesterday, we stopped at a gun show with David Pouch. He's running for Congress in the 4th District here in Iowa. Pro-Trump, pro-America, MAGA all the way. And later in the evening, met up with Vivek Ramaswamy and had a talk with him about his position and what he wants people to see tomorrow, or today rather, as well as his message for Trump. You know, he and Trump got into a row over the last couple of days, and so had a conversation with about that, and that's in the Gateway Pundit today.
Awesome, and we will be showing that soundbite later in our show. Now, Vivek is actually polling very low in the latest Iowa polls, but he's getting a lot of attention. When you talk to people out of the streets, though, are they primarily Trump supporters, or who are they going for?
Well, the numbers show that the majority are Trump supporters, right? Coming in, I think, what is it, at 48%? It's the highest of any GOP candidate in the Iowa caucuses ever. It's an uphill battle for everybody else. So Nikki, DeSantis, and Ramaswamy, they've all got problems to try and beat that. And really, it's a race for second place in Iowa is what I see for everybody other than Trump.
Wow. What do you think a turnout's going to be? Because caucusing, you got to drive out to this location, spend a few hours out there. The weather is miserable right now. By the time they get out of that caucus meeting, it's going to be even colder. What's the tone out there? Do you think people are going to show up, or what do you think?
Well, I do. I think that this election is a pivotal election in our history. I think people are starting to realize what's been happening, not just in the last 7 years, but for the last 50, 60 years, and the situation that our nation is in. And I think that they're looking for leadership, and they're looking for something to change the status quo. And what we're seeing last night, Ramaswamy's event, for example, small room, but completely packed. There was no place to stand. There was no place to sit. So people are engaged. And keep in mind, he's not winning. He's behind in the polls. So we can only imagine what the support is for Trump and MAGA and making America great again.
Yeah, that's why I wonder if Vivek's poll numbers are not accurate. He seems to have so much buzz, but who knows? They say a lot of people who are supporters just won't make the effort to go out and vote for some of these candidates, which is, I know, a big concern for all of them right now. Thank you so much for being out there in person, Tim Kramer. Stay warm. Great talking to you.
Thanks for having me.
And now a message from our sponsor, the Wellness Company. Everyone knows the next medical crisis is just around the corner when it comes to... Sorry, can we restart that? I just messed up.
Sure. Ready?
Okay.
In 3, 2, 1.
And now a message from our sponsor, the Wellness Company. Everyone knows the next medical crisis is just around the corner, whether it comes in the form of a pandemic or something more mundane like a tick bite. You and your family need to be prepared, and that is where the Wellness Company comes in. The Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals you can trust, and their new medical emergency kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you and your family healthy. Be ready for anything. This medical emergency kit contains an assortment of life-saving medications, including ivermectin and Z-Pak. The medical emergency kit provides a guidebook to aid in the safe use of all of these life-saving medications, from anthrax to tick bites to COVID and even to a bioweapon like the plague. The wellness company's medical emergency kit is exactly what you need to have on hand to be prepared. Rest assured knowing that you have emergency antibiotics, antivirals, and antiparasitics on hand to help keep you and your family safe. Go to twc.health/headlines today and order. That's twc.health/headlines. Use promo code headlines to save 10%. Some good news for Trump. According to the new CBS poll, his support among national Republican primary voters has now risen to its highest level yet. The CBS News YouGov poll shows Donald Trump leading the GOP presidential race by 69%, followed by Ron DeSantis at only 14%, and Nikki Haley at 12%, Vivek Ramaswamy at 4%, and Asa Hutchinson at 1%. His legal issues obviously haven't hurt his standing with primary voters, and some of his recent controversial statements are said to have actually resonated with many voters. Also, despite the repeated attacks and weaponization of the government against Trump, as well as the effort to keep him off the ballot in some states, support among likely GOP primary voters rose 11 points since May of 2023. Trump's support is both large and solid, more so than any other GOP candidate. Most who back Trump say they won't change their minds, and CBS said, quote, he continues to enjoy a solid floor under his support of voters, considering only him and no one else, they said. And it wouldn't be a Trump rally if the room wasn't packed to the brim or if there weren't a couple haters in the crowd. But per usual, he dished it right back at the hecklers. It went down in the Indianola, Iowa rally yesterday. You can see the crowds were in full force, and even the overflow rooms were overflowing with supporters, as documented all over social media with videos like these on Twitter. It was the perfect setting for some fireworks, and we all know how much Trump just loves a good show. So when climate protesters decided to interrupt his speech, well, he did exactly what he always does. Give it right back to them. Take a listen. You can hear how the Trump supporters tried to overpower the protesters with their Trump chants, and then Trump chimed in saying, "Go home to mommy." Trump has been visiting Iowa as much as possible between court appearances for the many cases against him, but the blizzard warnings and freezing temperatures over the weekend forced him to cancel 3 out of 4 of his in-person rallies in the past couple of days. Trump ended up holding a virtual rally in Des Moines on Saturday, and he gave a warning about the potential for World War III under Joe Biden. Listen.
Danger of World War III like we are right now. And I always say, and I say it in every speech, I will prevent World War III. I know all these people. I know good, bad, or indifferent. It doesn't make any difference. I know every one of them, and they're not going to mess around with us. We are weak. We are ineffective. We're laughed at as a country. And Bidenomics is a total disaster, to get back to your original
Trump's warning comes days after Biden's troops conducted airstrikes on the Houthis in Yemen and as Congress continues to fund the Ukraine and Israel wars. Trump also called out a couple of things that he says Democrats are good at. Watch.
Grossly incompetent. The only thing they know how to do is cheat on elections. They're very good at cheating on elections, and they're very good at also going after your political opponent. But they can't do anything else. That's all they're good at. And we're going to teach them a lesson.
Yeah.
Right?
Trump's senior campaign advisor Jason Miller says the former president planned to meet with Iowa voters at more intimate campaign stops ahead of tonight's caucuses. Now, joining the show to discuss it all is John Pierce, chairman of the National Constitutional Law Union. John, thank you so much for coming on. Now, another thing I was going to mention was that Ben Carson is warning people to look out for dirty tricks. and you may have some intel on that. What's going on?
Well, I think obviously, Ivory, there's a lot of factors that could be at play with the weather, of course, but you have to look at these other candidates that are running against President Trump. Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, they've been tossing out reporters, independent journalists who have shown up at their events, simply to see what's going on. Folks like Laura Loomer, folks like Matt Kim. And then you saw the other night, Vivek Ramaswamy really kind of pull a fast one with respect to, trying to convince voters that in order to save Trump, they should vote for Vivek, which I thought was really underhanded. So, you have three people who he's running against here who have really demonstrated a lack of loyalty to President Trump. I think President Trump is going to absolutely smash the opposition in the caucuses tonight. But I don't think you can underestimate the lengths to which these three other candidates will go, to try to fool voters, pull dirty tricks, suggest that, perhaps a caucus event is canceled because of the weather when it's really not. So I think folks really need to pay attention to what is being put out by the Trump campaign itself.
I see. Yeah, that's what Carson was saying. Only listen to Trump campaign. Now, there's other concerns that Democrats are going to come in and infiltrate some of the caucuses since they don't have their own caucus. I know when I used to be a reporter in Minnesota where they also do caucusing, and caucuses are meetings. You go into a meeting room, and Democrats had actually taken the sign from the Republican meeting room and moved it to another location so that to get Republicans to go into the wrong room. So there's definitely dirty tricks like that. Kind of Gateway Pundit reporting President Trump has shattered George W. Bush's previous record for the highest share of votes in the Des Moines Register GOP presidential poll. Trump's dominance in the latest poll has even forced MSNBC to commend Trump's record-breaking achievement. During Sunday's airing of MSNBC's Meet the Press, data analyst Steve Kornacki broke it down. Watch.
Put this Trump lead in some perspective here. First of all, the 48% that he's registering here, that is the highest share for a Republican candidate in a final Des Moines Register poll ever. That surpasses the record of 43% from George W. Bush on the eve of the 2000 caucuses. Bush won those caucuses. Also the margin, Trump 48, Haley 20. That's a 28-point margin. That is also the biggest margin in a final Register poll, also breaking a record of George W. Bush of 23 points when he won the caucuses in 2000. So that Trump lead, we haven't seen that before, but we've been seeing a lot in the polling this year.
And you can see that MSNBC's graph has Nikki Haley passing up Ron DeSantis in that poll compared to December. She campaigned in Adel, Iowa last night, then went on Fox News to make a final plea to Iowa voters this morning. Watch.
We don't need to have 4 more years of chaos. I'm an accountant. I know what it takes to get the economy back on track. I've been a 2-term governor that took a double-digit unemployment state and turned it into an economic powerhouse. I dealt with Russia, China, Iran, North Korea every day. I know what it means to put them on their heels and prevent war and protect Americans. This is a chance to reset. This is a chance to set the tone going forward so that our kids and grandkids have a life that they can be proud of. We can do this. If you will join with me, if you will caucus, I promise you our best days are yet to come.
And next up, New Hampshire.
Thanks so much. Great to see you.
And if you look at the CBS News YouGov poll, it is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis who is beating out Nikki Haley for second place. Either way, they are both trailing Trump by double digits. Now, DeSantis used to be an ally of Trump, but while campaigning in Iowa yesterday, he delivered a blistering critique of the former president, implying that Trump prioritizes personal loyalty over the nation's welfare. On his campaign stop in Ankeny, Iowa, DeSantis accused Trump of caring more about people who suck up to him than about the American people. Watch.
He cares about. You can be the most worthless Republican in America, but if you kiss the ring, he'll say you're wonderful. You can be the strongest, most dynamic, successful Republican and conservative in America, but if you don't kiss that ring, then he'll try to trash you. You know what? You deserve a nominee that's going to put you first, not himself first.
DeSantis and Trump used to be buddies. Trump endorsed him for governor back in 2017, helping DeSantis, who is a Tea Party conservative, to beat out his GOP opponents, take out the Democrats, and become governor. Trump called DeSantis a true fighter at that time, and DeSantis went on to protect Floridians' liberty in the pandemic when other governors were acting like dictators. But once DeSantis decided to run against Trump for president, Trump created a new nickname for him, Ron DeSanctimonious, and many within the Republican Party started to turn on Ron, seeing him as disloyal to Trump for running against him. DeSantis now trails Trump by more than 50 percentage points in some of the polls. Yikes. Next up is Vivek Ramaswamy, who, for all the headlines he's making, is only bringing in 4% of the vote in the CBS News YouGov poll and 8% of the vote in the latest NBC News Des Moines Register poll. Yesterday, Trump threw a jab at Vivek on social media, writing, "A vote for Vivek is a vote for the other side." Trump followed it up today, writing, quote, "A vote for Vivek is a wasted vote. I like Vivek, but he played it too cute with us." Yesterday, Gateway Pundit contributor Tim Kramer was able to speak with Vivek Ramaswamy in Davenport, Iowa. Tim asked Vivek about what his message would be to those who are still on the fence in the Hawkeye state. Vivek told him that it's going to take an outsider who's not bought and paid for, and he reminded people that he is the only candidate who has said he will strip vaccine manufacturers of their special liability exemptions. Tim then asked Vivek about President Trump's Truth Social post about him, and here's what his response was.
I think I saw your Twitter. I think his campaign advisors is where I'm going to put it in the managerial class around him was probably a little bit off the mark with it there on that strategy. I think the truth is friendly fire isn't helpful, but I'm not going to be criticizing him. He's a good president, and I respect his accomplishments for this country, and I will continue to respect that as the next president. But we have to open our eyes to the truth, and sometimes the truth hurts. The system, and I've done everything more than anybody else in this race or out of it, to push back against these unjust politicized persecutions. I wrote an amicus brief for the Supreme Court that I think may be better than some of the arguments they're putting up, because I feel an obligation to this country to make sure they do the right thing. But at a certain point, we got to open our eyes and see these people will stop at nothing. And at this point, I mean nothing to keep this man away from office. And it's disgusting. But we owe it to this country and to our founding fathers to make sure America First doesn't end with Trump. It didn't start in 2016. It started in 1776. And so we have a duty to this country to make sure we see this to another 250 years left. That's why I have a duty to this country to not only stay in this to the very end, but I think we're going to be successful.
Meanwhile, a clip of a controversial exchange between Vivek and a voter seems to be the reason for President Trump's recent scathing critique of him. Watch.
It's about this country. It's about this country. You want to save Trump, you vote for me. I'm telling you that. You vote for Trump. You're sending him. But you're sending him to his own demise. You're falling into the trap that not only a country's falling in, that he's falling. You want to save Trump, you vote for me. I need your support of the Iowa caucus. That's a good argument. It's not an argument, it's the truth. Do the right thing for this country. That's what I'm asking you for. I will consider. Thank you. That's the first time for this country. That, by the way. Because the others. No, forget that. But that's the truth, and I think you know it. Also about Trump. This is yes. This is the truth, and what I just told you, I think you know that in your heart to be true. Do the right thing on Monday. That's what I'm asking you for. Thank you. Thank you.
Vivek literally said there, if you want to save Trump, you vote for me. If you vote for him, you're sending him to his own demise, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. Perhaps that's why Trump called Vivek sly and deceitful in his recent posts. Well, joining us now to discuss this feud is the host of the Joey Manorino Show, Joey Manorino himself. Thank you so much for joining me. I believe you're out in Iowa right now, yes?
I just got back, and there was quite a bit of energy out there, but it was about minus 30 degrees Celsius. That was my cue to get back to Miami.
Wow. That is wild. So it looked like you met some of the candidates. At least you met Vivek, right?
Yeah, I spent some time with Vivek out there on the trail for about a week almost, and saw, I'd say, about 25 of his events with him and his campaign. And there was tons of energy out there. A lot of people that were there that were first-time voters, which was something that stood out to me. Not even a lot of Republican voters per se, but independents and libertarians, plus a lot of young voters, 17 and 18, because in Iowa, if you can vote in the general at 18, you can vote in the caucus at 17. So there was a lot of youth and enthusiasm there. And I did make it to one of the Trump events as well. And of course, with Donald Trump, it's always, a packed house full of the MAGA crowd and tons of enthusiasm with those two campaigns. Not so much with the other two that the media loves to talk about as the main competition to Trump, the Haley and the DeSantis. They were there. They did have crowds, but the enthusiasm simply just was kind of lacking in Iowa for those two. We'll see on caucus night, but I didn't see it on the ground.
That's why I'm kind of surprised that Vivek is so low in the polls. There does seem to be more enthusiasm for him. What do you make of the fact
I
that
don't
Vivek?
believe that. I frankly just don't believe that, because when you talk to people, even, you would talk to the Uber drivers and you would talk to people in the cafes, everybody had Vivek on the mind, simply because of the work ethic that he was pushing in Iowa. He would do 7 to 8 stops in a day. One night I was with his campaign driving in the SUVs. They couldn't even take the bus. They had to get in SUVs because of the traction on the ground. Literally, instead of canceling the event, drove 20 miles and then 5 hours back to Des Moines to meet with about 30 voters. So those kind of stories resonate with Iowans, whereas, Haley and DeSantis canceled their events that day. And it's a different kind of enthusiasm with Vivek's campaign, really reminiscent of the enthusiasm in Trump's 2016 campaign, if you want to be honest.
Wow. So what do you make of Vivek saying that he's helping Trump by taking votes away from him? What does that mean?
Yeah, that was I didn't love the shirts, to be honest with you. I'm a Trump guy. I've been with Trump since 2016, and those shirts probably could have stayed at the printing press, to be honest. But I do understand what he is making of it. He's sort of making the argument that Trump is wounded in the fight and he has fresh legs to carry it on at 38, whereas Trump's 77. I just don't agree with that line of thinking necessarily. I don't think Trump is a wounded candidate in any way. I think there's really nobody that would go in with a vengeance like him because of the actual animus he had to deal with from these people. But I see why it created some tension. At the same time, I still think Vivek is an incredible contender for the presidency.
Well, I'm very curious to see how the caucuses end up tonight. Joey Monorino, great talking to you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much.
And last but not least in the polls, actually, he is least in the polls, is Asa Hutchinson. He's getting just 1% of the vote in the CBS News YouGov poll. He is the former governor of Arkansas. He was out there in Iowa, though, but he posted that he spent his day on the campaign trail by bowling the final day of campaigning. Not sure why people like him still run. Interesting. Anyway, now a message from our sponsor, Field of Greens. Resolving to eat healthier this year was easy. Actually doing it, not so easy. Better nutrition is a key to health and longevity, and Field of Greens is helping me with that thanks to their easy scoops of super fruits and vegetables. It's the only fruit and vegetable product that literally promises better health. At your next checkup, your doctor will notice your improved health or your money back. Do your vitamins or green drinks promise better health? Nope. Each superfood and vegetable in Field of Greens was doctor selected for a specific health benefit. Some support your heart, lungs, and kidneys. Others support metabolism for healthy energy and weight loss. Look, if you resolve to get healthier in 24, it starts with Field of Greens. I got you a 15% off for your first order and free rush shipping. Visit fieldofgreens.com and use promo code HEADLINES. That's promo code HEADLINES at fieldofgreens.com. Fieldofgreens.com. Get that 15% off. By the way, we haven't been talking about the Democrat caucuses today because there are none. The Democrats have put a freeze on their first caucus of the year, and it's not because of the weather. Back in 2020, the Democrat Iowa caucus ended up being a total mess after deploying a Democrat Party app in hopes of making things easier and smoother. It stopped working before the caucuses even began, and by the end of the night, they still had no winner. Iowa is also known to project who will end up winning it all. But in 2020, Biden actually came in fourth place there. Some of the Democrats blamed the problems of that caucus on racism, of all things. Watch.
If you look at the population, it's about 90.7% white.
Why Iowa in the first place? It's 90% white. When you have a party as diverse as this to be in a state that's not diverse is terrible.
90% of the caucus goers today were white, so it's way skewed out of line.
The Iowa caucus is essentially the perfect example of systemic racism. 91% of the voters in Iowa are white. The reason why you see a drop in turnout, I'm just speculating here, it could be perhaps that white children are not in the cages.
Wow, wild. Well, instead of caucusing this year in Iowa, Democrats are for the first time gonna mail in votes that will be counted and reported in March. Also, yesterday, Axios reported that Democrats may switch parties to vote for Nikki Haley, which should tell you everything you need to know about how serious of a candidate she is for Republican voters. Trump's lead over the other primary candidates is so substantial that even a significant number of crossover votes probably won't help her come close to Trump, but it could allow her to sabotage someone like DeSantis, who is within arm's reach of her at the moment. GOP strategist David Caucus said, quote, if you even have 5,000 or 7,500 people across the state cross over to her, that might be the difference between her and Ron DeSantis, he said. Now, Mark Cuban put out a tweet pushing Democrats to cross over and vote for Nikki Haley since they have no Democrat caucus today. This sort of exercise of voters from one party crossing over to mess up another party's election is a little something called Operation Chaos. It's a term invented by the late great radio legend Rush Limbaugh, when he told Republican voters to go vote for the Democrat in the Democrat primaries to pull votes away from Obama back in 2008. Well, it looks like the reverse will happen to some extent tonight in Iowa. Now, the sheer fact that Democrats feel the need to skip the first and one of the most important caucuses and rally your base to vote for a Republican makes you wonder how much faith they really have in their incumbent president and his supposedly great economy. Now, even ABC, who works hard to make Democrats look good, revealed in a poll that they conducted that only 28% of Americans believe that Joe Biden has the mental sharpness to effectively lead. Watch.
Our poll, in fact, said 28%, just 28% think that President Biden has the mental sharpness to effectively serve for another term.
In other words, in what was certainly a carefully engineered poll to be as favorable as possible to Biden, 3 out of every 4 Americans realize the obvious. Biden is gone in more ways than one. Here's a video from Friday in Pennsylvania. Watch.
Morgan Sherwin. This is Morgan Sherwin and Sam Cerruti. They're our team members here. They help us. They help us, serve.
Dazed and confused. Well, at this point, I think it's fair to say the Democrats would prefer an app that they can update and improve over an incumbent president who has clear signs of dementia, who can barely navigate shaking hands, as well as as we officially head into the primary season. Well, meanwhile, back in Iowa today, President Trump gave a final speech in Des Moines before caucuses begin. Real America's Voice host Michelle Backus joins our show from Des Moines. Michelle, thank you so much for coming on. How was the speech? How was the crowd? What's the energy like out there?
Yeah, good afternoon. It's definitely exciting here. I'll tell you what, this is no longer a race for first. This is a race for second place. If you look at all of the polling right now, President Trump has a historic lead. He's kept that lead for quite a while. So right now, it's really about who comes in second. What's interesting, usually when you look at President Trump and he does his speeches or, is in a town hall, he's already focusing on the general election. He's immediately attacking Biden. But over this past couple days, he's been going after his opponents here in the primary, specifically DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and of course, more recently, Vivek Ramaswamy. That's interesting because Vivek has never really came out and attacked Trump. And then over the past couple days, there were some heated Twitter exchanges. You can go back and check that out. Now Trump is saying that Vivek is not part of the MAGA community and really turned his back on Vivek. So it's interesting how this is all playing out in these final days here.
And how's the weather out there?
So that's the golden question. It has been historically cold. So many flights on Friday were canceled coming into Des Moines. I know a lot of people who were trapped in other airports. It is so cold. I believe the temperature yesterday, the low was -17. Today it was -14. That was the low. I checked an hour ago. I think it's -11. The roads are icy. We saw a big snowstorm 2 days ago. So everyone is wondering, will this affect voter turnout, especially with the caucuses? President Trump has said his voters and supporters will, quote, walk on glass for him. In this case, walk on ice. Every single candidate, though, is really pushing for voters to still come out, turn out for the caucus tonight.
Wow, it's really interesting, the issue with the weather, and then all the Democrats thinking of, okay, we don't have a caucus, maybe we'll go hang out with the Republicans and cast some votes for Republicans. Have you had a chance to talk to any voters and see what their plans are?
Yeah, honestly, I've seen a lot of Trump supporters. For every one DeSantis supporter, I'm seeing about 2 to 3 Trump supporters. And, DeSantis poured a lot of money into the state. He's visited every single county. Of course, he had those endorsements, one of which from the governor, Kim Reynolds, as well as the evangelical Christian leader, Bob Vander Plaats. Nonetheless, it seems as if that is not working out for him. In terms of Democrats, it's definitely a concern. Obviously, then you're looking at Nikki Haley. But, I was even just looking at an event online of Nikki Haley's, and it didn't look very crowded. So I don't think things are going well for her right now. Iowa's interesting with the caucus because you can actually show up to the caucus location and switch your political affiliation right there and then. So that is definitely a concern. It's something for people to watch out for. And I am curious to see what happens in that realm. But I do believe that the other Republican voters are going to come out in pretty large numbers tonight.
Wow, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Michelle Dacus, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much.
And now a message from our sponsor, Zelenko Labs. If the COVID pandemic taught us anything, it's that you have to take control of your own family's health. You can't rely on the government or big pharma, and that is why many of you count on Z-Stack. Did you know there is a specially formulated version of Z-Stack made for people who took the vaccine? It's called Z-Detox. Z-Detox contains vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, NAC, ECGC. Dr. Zelenko's Z-Detox formula was especially created for individuals with weakened immune systems, especially those weakened by the COVID-19 vaccines and boosters. As most of you know, Dr. Vladimir Zelenko was the world-renowned doctor that President Trump credited with his successful early treatment protocol and his decision to take hydroxychloroquine. If you were forced to take the vaccine, if you have a friend or family member who took the vaccine, order Z-Detox today and help your immune system fight back. Supercharge your immune system. Go to zstacklife.com/headlines and order today and use promo code headlines to save an additional 15%. That's zstacklife.com/headlines and order today. Well, Natalie Winters with the Steve Bannon War Room has breaking news today that Republican Party members had met with Chinese Communist Party officials to plan strategy and discuss the direction of U.S.-China policy. A 2017 meeting brochure outlined how a delegation of leaders from both Republican and Democrat parties met with senior officials with the Chinese Communist Party in Beijing back in December of 2017. According to the reporting by Natalie Winters, the participants included the RNC treasurer at the time, Anthony Duncan, who was serving under the leadership of Ronna McDaniel. Despite the massive security threat that China faces to America, there were many RNC leadership members who attended these secretive meetings, including several former RNC chairmen as well. Now, other news, over in the United Kingdom, a former MI6 spy chief is framing a Donald Trump victory as a national security threat to the UK. Many of you will likely remember the role of MI6 that they played in trying to undermine then candidate Trump using information from the Hillary Clinton campaign that was laundered through former MI6 spy Christopher Steele, that old dossier. Yeah. During an interview with Sky News Sunday Morning with Trevor Phillips, former MI6 head Sir Richard Dearlove said that Trump's likely re-election could, quote, pose a threat to the UK's national security, he said. Even after years of intelligence agencies retaliating against Donald Trump for daring to go against the status quo and call out their corruption, they are still arrogant enough to continue the facade that Trump is the threat and not them. What a time to be alive. Well, that's all for today's show. For more information about the stories that we covered tonight and for the best in breaking news coverage, you can check out Gateway Pundit online at thegatewaypundit.com. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Gateway Beyond the Headlines on Vigilant News Network. You can check us out at vigilantnews.com, but keep this stream on because we have developing coverage of the Iowa caucuses tonight. And then be sure to tune in tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, as we continue covering all the news the corporate media won't. Good night. And God bless America.
Gateway Beyond the Headlines, your daily wrap of the top news stories chosen by the readers of Gateway Pundit.